The diplomatic halls of the Galactic Empire buzzed with hushed conversations that had persisted for over a decade. Ambassador Veltar of the Kefirian Council leaned closer to his aide, his 6 eyes darting nervously around the chamber. "They say she still has it," he whispered, his translator device barely catching the tremor in his voice. "The human female. She still keeps the Vorthic." 3 systems away, Dr. Sarah Chun stood in her research facility's garden, watching a creature that defied every xenobiological protocol in the galaxy. The Vorthic standing nearly 8 feet, tall with midnight black scales that shimmered like oil carefully tended to a patch of earth. Tomatoes with claws that could slice through starship hull plating. "Kess, the fertilizer ratio is still off in Section 3, Sarah called out, not looking up from her datapad. The massive predator turned, revealing rows of crystalline teeth that could crush bone, and made a series of clicking sounds that Sarah's universal translator converted to, "The soil composition reminds me of home. Perhaps we need more phosphorus." It had been 12 years since Sarah found the abandoned cub on Kepler 442b during a routine xenobiology survey. The Vorthic species was legendary throughout the Empire apex predators from the death world of Vorthic Prime, capable of hunting and killing any known sentient species. Their young were abandoned at birth, expected to survive alone or perish. It was the way of their people, a brutal tradition that had created the most feared warrior race in 3 galactic arms. But Sarah hadn't known any of that when she discovered the small, starving creature hiding in a cave system. She only saw a frightened, injured animal that needed help. The Empire's reaction had been intense. Dr. Chun, Admiral Zorx had said during the emergency tribunal, his reptilian features twisted with barely contained horror. "You have committed an act of unprecedented recklessness. The Vorthic are not pets. They are weapons of mass destruction in biological form." Sarah had stood her ground then, just as she stood by her decision now. Kess was a baby. She was dying. I couldn't leave her. "She?" The Admiral's voice had cracked. "You've given it a name?" Now, watching Kess carefully water the delicate earth plants with hands that could tear through reinforced steel, Sarah smiled at the memory. The tribunal had lasted for weeks. Xenobiologists, military strategists, and political theorists had testified about the catastrophic implications of a human-raised Vorthic. They spoke of genetic imperatives, of predatory instincts, of the inevitable day when the creature would revert to its nature and slaughter everything in sight. They had been wrong about almost everything. Kess approached with a basket of perfectly harvested vegetables, her movements precise and careful. "Sarah, the Terran ambassador is here for the scheduled visit. Shall I prepare the usual refreshments?" "That would be wonderful, thank you." As Kess disappeared into the facility, Sarah reflected on the journey that had brought them here. The early days had been challenging, a frightened, traumatized cub who spoke no known language and seemed to survive on pure instinct. But Sarah had patience, and more importantly, she had treated Kess as what she was, a child who needed guidance, not a monster to be feared. The breakthrough had come when Kess was 3. Sarah had been working late in her lab when she heard what sounded like singing. Following the sound, she found the young Vorthic humming a melody Sarah had been playing earlier, a lullaby from Earth. That was when Sarah realized that Kess wasn't just learning to survive. She was learning to live. Ambassador Williams entered the garden, and Sarah didn't miss how his steps faltered when Kess emerged with a tea service. Even after years of diplomatic visits, the sight of a Vorthic performing domestic tasks still unsettled most visitors. "Dr. Chun," Williams said, accepting his cup with slightly trembling hands. "The council has questions." Sarah sighed. "They always do." "The Vorthic Collective has made another formal request for Kess to be returned to them. They claim she is reaching maturity and must undergo the rite of blood to claim her place among their people." Kess, who had been quietly arranging flowers, went very still. Her voice, when she spoke, carried undertones that Sarah's equipment registered as subsonic frequencies that could induce fear responses in most species. But her words were gentle. Ambassador Williams, would you like sugar with your tea? Williams blinked, the juxtaposition clearly overwhelming his diplomatic training. Yes, thank you. Sarah watched the exchange with familiar pride. This was what the Empire couldn't understand, what they refused to acknowledge. Kes wasn't a tame monster or a biological weapon waiting to activate. She was a person who had chosen her own path, who had grown up with human values of compassion, curiosity, and cooperation. You can tell the Council, Sarah said finally, that Kes makes her own decisions. She always has. As if summoned by the conversation, Kes set down the sugar bowl and looked directly at the ambassador. When she spoke, her voice carried the absolute authority of an apex predator, but her words carried something the Vorthic Collective had never heard from one of their own. Ambassador, I am exactly where I choose to be. I have found my pack. Later that evening, after Williams had departed with his usual mixture of confusion and awe, Sarah and Kes sat together watching the sunset. In the distance, Sarah could see the lights of the human settlement that had grown. Around their research facility, a community that had learned to accept and even love their unusual protector. Do you ever regret it? Sarah asked quietly. Not growing up with your own kind? Kes considered this with the same careful attention she brought to everything. I am what I am because of who raised me, she said finally. The Vorthic Collective creates killers. You created something new. Across the galaxy, in the Empire's capital, another whispered conversation began. Did you hear? The humans Vorthic has started teaching xenobiology to the local children. Teaching. Can you imagine? They couldn't imagine, and that was exactly the point. Humanity had done the impossible once again, not through superior technology or military might, but through the simple revolutionary act of choosing love over fear. And the Empire would whisper about it for generations to come. Asterisk.